At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
A shock and awe bombing campaign lit up Baghdad to start the war 20 years ago. The U.S. military toppled the regime of Saddam Hussein and ultimately captured the deposed dictator. Iraqis who lived through his reign say it was horrific and brutal.
It's something you cannot be imagined. It's just like when you talk about Stalin or Hitler. It's the same situation. Like he was with no mercy, a government, like a regime with no mercy.
President George W. Bush declared mission accomplished on May 1st, 2003. But the war dragged on as remnants of Saddam's Ba'athist Party and other insurgents continued to fight U.S. and allied forces.
Ambition and hatred are enough to bring Iraq and al-Qaeda together, enough so al-Qaeda could learn how to build more sophisticated bombs and learn how to forge documents, and enough so that al-Qaeda could turn to Iraq for help in acquiring expertise on weapons of mass destruction.
Iraq's weapons of mass destruction never materialized, but the human cost for Iraqi citizens and American soldiers grew. Critics, including former Obama administration Secretary of State Jim Steinberg, call the U.S. intervention in Iraq unwise.
There are two kinds of critiques. One, which is there was no justification for doing it all in the first place, or which is one kind of critique, and the other is that, well, there was a justification, but only if you were capable of making sure that what came after it was not worse than what happened before.
President Barack Obama withdrew U.S. forces from Iraq in late 2011, only to re-enter the country 3 years later to fight an Islamic State insurgency that rose amid political unrest. Islamic State took control of Mosul and several large areas of Iraq before its ultimate defeat there in 2017. The U.S. formally ended its combat mission in Iraq in 2021, and about 2,500 U.S. troops remain to advise Iraqis on how best to counter pockets of Islamic State.
While ISIS is significantly degraded in Iraq and Syria, the group maintains the capability to conduct operations within the region and has the desire to strike outside of it.
Speaking to the Al Hora TV channel this month, Iraq's president said Iraqi citizens now have more freedom than they did in the era of Saddam.
After overcoming the hardships of the past 2 decades, Iraqis are enjoying peace and stability, and the government is focusing on improving the services and infrastructure in the country.
But Sama Aziz, who fled Iraq in 2006 and is the wife of Ahmed al-Suhal, says Iraqis are still suffering.
It's really the same. Like, what's happening in Iraq right now is no different than what was happening in Hussein's time.
More than 4,000 U.S. troops died in Iraq, along with tens of thousands of Iraqi civilians. Carla Babb, VOA News, Washington.